A horn honked twice. From across the intersection, a young lady gestured through an open limousine window. "It's Maria," said Artemis, then caught himself. Let us go. Maybe we'll have better luck at the next site." Butler took the lead, stopping the traffic with a wave of one massive palm. "Maybe we should take Maria with us. A full-time driver would make my job a lot easier." It took Artemis a moment to realize he was being ribbed. "Very funny, Butler. You were joking, weren't you?" "Yes, I was." "I thought so, but I don't have a lot of experience with humour, apart from Mulch Diggums." Mulch was a kleptomaniac dwarf who had stolen from and for Artemis on previous occasions. Diggums liked to think of himself as a funny fairy, and his main sources of humour were his own bodily functions. "If you can call that humour," said Butler, smiling in spite of himself at his own memories of the pungent dwarf. And suddenly, Artemis froze, in the middle of a heaving intersection. Butler glowered at the 3 lanes of city traffic, 100 impatient drivers leaning on their horns. "I feel something," breathed Artemis. "Electricity." "Could you feel it on the other side of the road?" asked Butler. Artemis stretched out his arms, feeling a tingle on his palms. "He's coming after all, but several meters off target. Somewhere there is a constant that is not constant." A shape formed in the air. From nothing came a cluster of sparks and the smell of sulphur. Inside the cluster, a grey-green thing appeared, with golden eyes, chunky scales, and great horned ears. It stepped out of nowhere and onto the road. It stood erect, 5 feet high, humanoid, but there was no mistaking this creature for human. It sniffed the air through slitted nostrils, opened a snake's mouth, and spoke.
"Felicitations to Lady Etherington Smythe,"
it said in a voice of crushed glass and grating steel. The creature grasped Artemis's outstretched palm with a 4-fingered hand. "Curious," said the Irish boy. Butler wasn't interested in curious. He was interested in getting Artemis away from this creature as quickly as possible. "Let's go," he said brusquely, laying a hand on Artemis's shoulder. But Artemis was already gone. The creature had disappeared as quickly as it had come, taking the teenager with him. The incident would make the news later that day, but strangely enough, in spite of the hundreds of tourists armed with cameras, there would be no pictures. The creature was insubstantial, as though it did not have a proper hold on this world. Its grip on Artemis's hand was soft, with a hard core, like bone wrapped in foam rubber. Artemis did not try to pull away. He was fascinated.
"Lady Etherington Smythe," repeated the creature, and Artemis could hear that it was scared. "Does this be her estate?"
Hardly modern syntax, thought Artemis, but definitely English. Now, how does a demon exiled in limbo learn to speak English? The air buzzed with power, and white electrical bolts crackled around the creature, slicing holes in space. A temporal rent. A hole in time. Artemis was not overly awed by this. After all, he had seen the lower elements police actually stop time during the Fowl Manor siege. What did concern him was that he was likely to be whisked away with the creature, in which case the chances of him being returned to his own dimension were small. The chances of him being returned to his own time were minuscule. He tried to call out to Butler, but it was too late. If the word late can be used in a place where time does not exist. The rent had expanded to envelop both him and the demon. The architecture and population of Barcelona faded slowly, like spirits, to be replaced first by a purple fog, then a galaxy of stars. Artemis experienced feverish heat, then bitter cold. He felt sure that if he materialized fully, he would be scorched to cinders, then his ashes would freeze and scatter across space. Their surroundings changed in a flash, or maybe a year. It was impossible to tell. The stars were replaced by an ocean, and they were underneath it. Strange deep-sea creatures loomed from the depths, luminous tentacles scything the water all around them. Then there was a field of ice, then a red landscape, the air filled with fine dust. Finally, they were looking at Barcelona again. But different. The city was younger. The demon howled and gnashed its pointed teeth, abandoning all attempts to speak English. Luckily, Artemis was one of 2 humans in any dimension who spoke Gnomish, the fairy language. "Calm yourself, friend," he said. "Our fate is sealed. Enjoy these wondrous sights." The demon's howl ceased abruptly, and he dropped Artemis's hand. "Speak you fairy tongue?" "Gnomish," corrected Artemis. "And better than you, I might add." The demon fell silent, regarding Artemis as though he was some kind of fantastic creature, which of course he was. Artemis, for his part, spent what could possibly be the last few moments of his life observing the scene before him. They were materializing at a building site. It was the Casa Mila, but not yet completed. Workmen swarmed across the scaffolding erected at the front of the building, and a swarthy, bearded man stood scowling at a sheet of architectural drawings. Artemis smiled. It was Gaudi himself. How amazing! The scene solidified, colours painting themselves brighter. Artemis could smell the dry Spanish air now, and the heavy tangs of sweat and paint. "Excuse me," said Artemis in Spanish. Gaudi looked up from the drawings, and his scowl was replaced with a look of utter disbelief. There was a boy stepping from thin air. Beside him, a cowering demon. The brilliant architect absorbed every detail of the tableau, committing it to his memory forever. "See?" he said hesitantly. Artemis pointed to the top of the building. "You've got some mosaics planned for the roof. You might want to rethink those. Very derivative." Then the boy and demon disappeared. Butler did not panic when a creature stepped out of the hole in time. Then again, he was trained not to panic, no matter how extreme the situation. Unfortunately, nobody else at the Passage de Gracier intersection had attended Madame Coe's personal protection academy, and so they proceeded to panic just as loudly and as quickly as they could. All except the curly-haired girl and the 2 men with her. When the demon appeared, the public froze. When the creature disappeared, they unfroze explosively. The air was rent with the sounds of shouting and screaming. Drivers abandoned their cars or simply drove them into store windows to escape. A wave of humans withdrew from the point of materialization as though repelled by an invisible force. Again, the girl and her companions bucked the trend, actually running towards the spot where the demon had shown up. The man with the crutches displayed remarkable agility for one who was supposedly injured. Butler ignored the pandemonium, concentrating on his right hand, or rather where his right hand had been a second earlier. Just before Artemis fizzled into another dimension, Butler had managed to get a grip on his shoulder. Now the disappearing virus had claimed his own hand. He was going wherever Artemis had gone. He could still feel his young charge's bony shoulder in his grip. Butler fully expected his arm to vanish, but it didn't. Just the hand. He could still feel it, in an underwater pins and needles kind of way. And he could still feel Artemis. "No, you don't," he grunted, tightening his invisible grip. "I've put up with too much hardship over the years for you to disappear on me now." And so Butler reached down through the decades and yanked his young charge back from the past. Artemis didn't come easy. It was like dragging a boulder through a sea of mud, but Butler was not the kind of person that gave up easily. He planted his feet and put his back into it. Artemis popped out of the 20th century and landed sprawling into the 21st. "I'm back," said the Irish boy, as if he had simply returned from an everyday errand. "How unexpected." Butler picked up his principal and gave him a perfunctory examination. "Everything is in the right place, nothing broken. Now, Artemis, tell me, what is 27 multiplied by 18.5? Artemis straightened his suit jacket. "Oh, I see you're checking my mental faculties. Very good. I suppose it's conceivable that time travel could affect the mind." "Just answer the question," insisted Butler. 499.5, if you must know." "I'll take your word for it." The giant bodyguard cocked his head to one side. "Sirens. We need to get out of this area, Artemis, before I'm forced to cause an international incident." He hustled Artemis to the other side of the road, to the only car still idling there. Maria looked a little pale, but at least she had not abandoned her clients. "Well done," said Butler, flinging open the rear door. "Airport, stay off the motorway as much as possible." Maria barely waited until Butler and Artemis were belted before burning rubber down the street, ignoring the traffic lights. The blonde girl and her companions were left on the roadside behind them. Maria glanced at Artemis in the mirror. What happened out there?
No questions, said Butler curtly. Eyes on the road. Drive.
He knew better than to ask questions himself. Artemis would explain all about the strange creature and the shining rift when he was ready. Artemis remained silent as the limousine swung down towards Les Ramblas, and from there into the labyrinthine back streets of downtown Barcelona.